Story 1. Bringing their pint glass back to the bar along with a few others they happen to gather along the way. Story 2. The dead giveaway is that they are polite to members of the service industry and have to receive legendarily bad service in order to so much as voice a complaint. Story 3. They talk to waitstaff like they are humans who have feelings and whose lives are not defined by how quickly they get you another basket of breadsticks. Story 4. When we are at a table with several people in a restaurant and the servers bring the dishes, we point out to them which person receives which dish. Story 5. Home kitchen filled with items in labeled quart and pint soup containers. Know the gossip about local restaurant and bar management. Story 6. They understand the issues and instead of getting all upset, they will be calm about things and joke about it. Story 7. They tip well, treat the wait staff with kindness, and can tell when the floor staff is overworked and needs a break. They can also carry a ridiculous number of drinks in each hand while navigating a moving crowd, deftly avoiding wayward toddlers and cranky seniors by doing that dance-like hip-rotating move. They say, "Behind you," audibly when they pass within 3 feet of any staff member's back, even though they do not work there. They do not work on Mondays. Additionally, they do not order any seafood or fish dishes late in the week, and they never have the soup. Story 8. For me, I can tell the difference based on whether or not you break down boxes before you toss them in the bin. Unbroken whole boxes clogging your bin means you have never worked in service before. Story 9. Push in their chairs and clean up after themselves in public spaces, along with what everyone else has said about tipping, being kind to servers and bartenders. Additionally, the phrase "on the fly" has not been mentioned yet, or perhaps I missed it. Story 10. My wife and I met working at Olive Garden. I was a cook and she was a bartender. To this day, we still clean and buss our table to the best of our ability, including stacking and combining dishes and silverware. Our servers are always shocked but thankful. Story 11. They don't leave messes when they leave. It is usually cleaner than when they arrived, especially if it is a restaurant. Story 12. They are the ones who rush to prevent that one person who thinks he is helping a server by taking a drink off the server's tray. Story 13. Always putting items back neatly where they found them in the store, especially folding clothes in a clothing store. I even catch myself straightening messy aisles while I am shopping. It has been years since I left retail, but that habit is still ingrained in me. Story 14. They will tell the service worker that they understand the struggle, or at least that's what my mom says whenever she talks with someone in retail or service. Terminal payments, am I right? When will they work? Story 15. Immediately saying thank you anytime the server delivers any item to anyone seated at the table doesn't have to be my drink that they just put down. I am still acknowledging the service and thanking them. Story 16. I won't go to basically any store if it is less than an hour before they close. If they close at 10 p.m. and it is 9:05, I won't go. I hated when people would order loads of food like 5 minutes before we closed after I cleaned everything. Story 17. The side eye and the smirk, just for the cashier, they give when the clueless customer in front of them is holding up the line for some absolute non-complaint. Story 18. Throwing in a bit more of an opaque narrow giveaway. They pay attention to how drinks are refilled at restaurants, and if there is glass-on-glass contact, they secretly judge the servers but do not mention it to them. Story 19. I haven't worked in retail in over 20 years, but I still catch myself fronting shelves in stores when I am shopping. Story 20. Coming up behind you. May I? Has a ton of patience unless at home. Often keeps an unclean house like mechanics have broken down cars. Has a generally higher volume than the rest of us. Story 21. Using a friendly tone of voice when talking to other service workers, and generally being kind and polite to them. Story 22. In my experience, I have consistently received odd looks at family or social gatherings for being casually able to pick up a large number of plates at the same time. I guess working in a restaurant for over a decade has some side effects. Story 23. I worked in restaurants for almost 15 years, for my first job at 16. It took me until my mid-30s, when I had already been working in technology for 4 years, before I stopped reflexively saying corner every time I walked around a corner with something in my hands. Story 24. I pre-bus my table after my family finishes eating dinner. Food consolidated, plates stacked, cups together, and silverware piled on a napkin for ease of carry. Story 25. They will stack their plates at the restaurant. However, and this is essential, they stack them in a reasonable manner, not in a style that resembles an impossible-to-carry Jenga-style booby trap pile. Story 26. I quit working in restaurants in 2019. I still say behind, on your left, on your right, and sharp or hot, all the time no matter what. Story 27. Being able to tolerate a near unlimited amount of nonsense, or conversely, having zero tolerance for any nonsense at all because it is no longer their responsibility and they are tired of it. Story 28. Most of the people I know who have been servers or bartenders always tip at least 30 to 40%, sometimes 50% when at a bar. I'm not sure if I have seen regular people do that unless they are incredibly wealthy. Story 29. My partner and I recently moved in together. He asked me why I always put the glasses fresh from the dishwasher behind the ones that were already in the cupboard, and that is how I realized I never stopped following the first in, first out method despite it being almost a decade since I worked in food service and retail. Story 30. They drink Rumple Minze. Industry people take shots of it because to customers, their breath will smell like mouthwash. Story 31. When somebody organizes their own or other people's plates and utensils after eating at a table to help the server, they have been on the other side before. Almost a 100% hit rate. Story 32. I feel so seen in these comments. I worked as a server throughout college and into my early 20s. One in a casual sports bar environment and the other at a pretty terrible truck stop restaurant. And all the answers I have seen, I absolutely agree with. Stack dishes in proper order. Trash and silverware on top. Scrape food from one plate to another so I do not stack directly into food. Wipe the table when I am done stacking. Ask for things by saying, "Hey, if it is not too much trouble, could I possibly get this or that?" Perfect, thank you. No complaints unless the service is absolutely atrocious and inexcusably poor. Wait patiently for food when it is busy. Do not go to a restaurant less than 30 minutes before closing time. And that is cutting it close. Order around and carry 3 to 4 drinks at a time. The biggest thing about working as a server or bartender is that you have a keen understanding of how tough it is. I wish everyone was required to work in a restaurant. Average tip is 30 to 35%. Story 33. I was out eating with a friend and a couple of their friends. I was being polite to the waitstaff. One of my friend's friends asked me if I was being overly nice because I was in the service industry at the time. I said no, I'm being nice because they are a human being. Story 34. After eating at a restaurant, they will stack the plates, clean the table, and push all the dishes to the edge of the table. Story 35. Never sit down to eat anywhere 30 minutes before they close. I am currently working in a kitchen while going back to school. I was working in and out of kitchens in between working in construction before returning to school. I do not think I will ever break myself of the habit, even after I stop working in kitchens. Those 30 minutes are used to start breaking down and pre-cleaning, so you can get out 20 to 30 minutes after the doors get locked. This means everyone, including the dishwashers, can leave at a decent hour. If I go in 30 minutes before closing, I am getting the easiest thing on the menu to make and taking it to go because I understand. Story 36. Rules. Double doors have an entry side and an exit side. No knives in the sink, ever. Do not scoop ice with a glass, ever. Rinse, wash, sanitize, rinse. Clean the ice maker. Story 37. If they say behind or to your left when they are sliding past you, that habit was drilled into me during my years of working in kitchens, and I still do it almost 20 years later. I suppose this is specific to food service and not necessarily all service industry jobs, though. Story 38. When the place closes in about 30 minutes, they consider it already closed instead of showing up there at the last minute. They do that because they know that, yes, even though it is open until a certain time, they understand those workers have other tasks to complete before closing so they can leave at a reasonable hour. Story 39. Years ago, I worked as a line cook at a seafood restaurant. I had sliced my thumb open shucking oysters one Valentine's night. Well, maybe the next day or the day after that, my partner and I decided to go to dinner for our Valentine's Day. If you work in the industry, you know that Valentine's Day is all hands, so you always have to celebrate events and holidays on a different date. Suddenly, our server brings a complimentary appetizer to our table. I was so confused, but then they tell me that the giant duct tape thumb I was rocking was a dead giveaway, that I was in the industry and obviously poor, and he wanted to treat us. It was a nice surprise, but I had no idea just how much I stuck out like a sore thumb. Story 40. When the service is objectively terrible, they will still humanize the workers and chalk it up to circumstances and be more forgiving. Story 41. Whole hand or two finger points when giving directions. Use guests instead of customers, especially in hospitality. Use "my pleasure" can immediately switch to a higher-pitched adult baby talk voice, the customer service voice, over apologizing for the smallest things. Story 42. Tipping is 30% no matter what. Orders are taken quickly, cleanup is done, and plates are stacked the proper way. The person organizes everyone. It's quite amusing to watch. Story 43. People who worked on sales floors can be identified if you watch their eyes. They are always looking for products that need facing, are in the wrong spot, or need to be thrown out. It took me years to break the habit of fixing things, but I fixed them correctly, and apparently having a hole on the shelf is a mistake. Story 44. Being able to carry 2 to 4 plates full of food in one hand without any of the food touching a plate that it is not on. Story 45. How they interact with people in the service industry. I am polite to everyone in it, but very friendly and engaging with people in hotels, as I worked there for 7 years. Story 46. My wife used to be a flight attendant. If we have people over, she still serves dinner with an additional plate on her arm. Story 47. They clean up the table after they eat and are usually polite to the staff working. They do not treat them like garbage. But yes, customer service voice is a real thing. Story 48. Stacking plates so it is easier for the waiter or waitress to take from the table. Bonus points if they clear all the leftover food onto the top plate so it is not just a bunch of crushed food between stacked plates. Story 49. I always clean and organize my table before I leave, so that the bussers can easily clear and clean it. I am definitely more patient with workers because I understand that working with the public can be challenging. I'm not going to add to their stress. I stand up for them if they are being treated poorly. No one treats someone poorly and gets away with it under my watch. Story 50. Being kind to the servers. Ordering in a way that will minimize their trips to the kitchen. Communicating clearly while ordering. When ordering food, going ahead and asking for that side of ranch that you know you are going to want later. Even if your food is made incorrectly, not mentioning it unless it honestly ruins the meal. Giving the server a compliment if you can tell they are working hard. Paying quickly and tipping generously. In short, being kind, low maintenance, and tipping well. I have been on the giving and receiving side here. I ask people where they work all the time because I can spot the industry professionals. Story 51. Heard. The hind. If it's not too much trouble. I'm so sorry to bother. Stacks all dishes with utensils and trash on top. Pours all liquid into top glass, then stacks them. And arguably the best and funniest. Can you charge me like 50 cents for something so I can tip since the website didn't let me? Story 52. A dead giveaway? They will instinctively know where the employee's only bathroom is and will always be the first to point out when the line gets too long or someone is not following the rules. Oh, and they will probably give you a side eye if you try to sneak a free refill. It is the "I have seen it all" vibe mixed with an uncanny ability to read a room. Story 53. How they treat people in the service industry should be mandatory to work in the service industry for at least a year. Story 54. I've worked in the kitchen and in produce and grocery retail. I'm a licensed plumber now. Recently, on the job site, I was carrying a heavy load of fittings. Meanwhile, there was a laborer slightly in the way of the door with his back turned to me. Behind. Out of habit, and honestly, it's quicker and easier to say this. The worker perked right up and immediately moved away from the door, giving me a look like, "You've worked in the kitchen before, haven't you?" As for grocery retail, anytime I grab an item off the shelf that looks like it has been faced, I always bring a few from the back to the front. I understand the efforts and pressure to make the department look clean and tidy, all while trying to restock items. I've received a few thank yous from those who noticed my efforts. Story 55. The ability to describe the Flash and Go, the brain, the Batwing, and the goat, and how that would never be acceptable these days. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.